Hello, I'm Michelle Adams from ProWritingAid, and today we are back again with JoEllen Nordström, our favorite editing expert. JoEllen joins us every month for the Self-Editing School series, and last month we learned how to navigate the 4 stages of editing, and it was great. So what have you got for us this month, JoEllen?
Hi there, sorry I was muted. We're going to talk about the 5 stages of thorough editing. So we'll be walking through how to more do it yourself. What are the things that the editor is looking at instead of what are the levels, but how would you implement that actually today so that they can walk away with an action plan?
All right, that sounds great. I'm going to go ahead and mute myself, and I'll be watching with everyone else, and I'll be coming back at the end to answer some questions.
All right, sounds good. Okay, I hope you can see my screen now. So we have the 5 principles of a thorough self-editing process here. Oh my goodness, let's see. And there we go. So we also have a blog post about this. So if you want to check that out, we'll be mailing all of the handouts that I've done here. So you are welcome to visit, and there's a lot more. In this last year, we have been doing a lot of videos and different things. So you can find series in our YouTube channel. You will find some of the videos inserted on the blog post here, and then we have the handouts of the podcast. So whatever questions you have, please feel free to contact me either here after I finish this presentation, or go ahead and email us, and we'll be glad to do that. And we also have a phone. I know that's really old style, but we love to answer the phone and talk to all the authors who need more information. So again, you will get this in your emails, and the links are all here. So if you want to read more of that blog post, is there. So we're going to do the 5 steps there, the 5 principles of a thorough self-editing process. And again, I know that I'm kind of talking to the choir here, but I don't mean to be preaching or anything, but we're going to start with the self-editing tools. And I do want to say again that we use everything that I'm showing you today is what our editors use. And we have been around since 1994. We've helped over 50,000 authors. And if you want to pop on by, you can see all the hundreds of authors who put up their books on our pages and that. So again, this is what the professionals use. So the more familiar you can become with this, the better prepared you are to do your own self-editing. And self-editing tools are going to help you to polish your manuscript in the ways that they already know the grammar, the spelling, the punctuation. So it makes it easier for you to become aware of the necessary syntax and that you need to become more advanced as an editor in your self-editing process. You're going to detect and correct the techniques and writing issues, like I mentioned, the grammar, the sentence structure, how is that put together, the spelling, and the punctuation. Now, it's not perfect. Many of you probably already experienced this, but it is a matter of that it will make the things that might be questionable pointed out. And then you can decide bit by bit if that's what you'd like to follow and if it's appropriate for what you're writing. But if you don't know the rules, then you need to contact somebody who does, because it's very, very important that the corrections are made correctly. So basic corrections, the style suggestions, that's what ProWritingAid is very good at providing that now. So with the style, it's making sure that, you can actually set it if you're writing business style, or if you're writing more personal or fiction or nonfiction or research. All these things you can put in there so that the intelligent assistant that's in there is helping you and teaching you how to write appropriate for that genre and or write appropriate for your readers. So again, you want to express your thoughts and your feelings there. So you're going to recognize the different writing styles, and then it allows you to self-edit. And it's not just the editing that you're achieving here. It really is the ability to learn and to master your craftsmanship as an author. So it's just the next step. And, the top #1 best-selling authors, they still have, all of their work being reviewed again and again and again before they even submit it to their agent now. It's just too competitive. So use the tools that are available for you. Make sure that you are presenting the best first impression you can of your writing so that you get the best opportunities in publishing. So ProWritingAid edits your grammar, spelling, punctuation. That's a basic. That's why it's called a copy editor. It gives statistics of your writing. This lets you find your crutches, your sticky words, the different things that are in there, and let you know where you're challenged or where you're succeeding very well. It'll provide the suggestions and help you improve. And again, use the reports. I'm a big fan of the reports. Again, there's a link there. Take advantage of that sale. It's a really good deal. And of course, use the reports. If you haven't used the reports and there's one thing you walk away with today, try that out, set it up, see what you can learn about yourself. I think you'll be pretty amazed. So you want to start with the self-editing basics. Once you've got your tools ready and you're set up, you're using your plugins, everything that's available that you use. If you're using a writing system, then most of them work together quite well. Make sure that you're set up with the best tools. You don't need them all. In fact, too many tools can be bad because it hinders you from actually being creative. So find what works for you and then start focusing on these basics. So the first thing I like to talk about again and again and again is writing and editing are separate and they need to remain separate. So one of the suggestions I like to make is turn off the editing tool when you're in the creative mode. If you like to edit, go right ahead. But for many people, it's quite helpful because it's another interruption. The same way you want to turn off your internet, same way you want to turn off your phone, the same way you want to shut your door. It's really nice to just focus on the creativity and let that part of your brain flow because you will edit, just not at that moment. When you are done, then you can write, so you're writing separately and then you can do the editing. That can be a daily process, or you can wait until the entire book is done. You can do it by chapters, whichever it is, but make sure that you set that time separately so that you can approach that in a very meticulous and structured fashion. And so that your brain knows what you're looking at and you're not getting pulled in two directions. So, and the other thing is, if you're going to separate it completely, when you do that first big structural edit, when you're going back and you finally finished it, take a break. Celebrate, relax, have fun, whatever it is, but let your brain really calm down and then come back and you're going to edit the manuscript at a little bit later time. This can be months, it can be weeks, but definitely more than a couple days. So give yourself that break, let it all sit down into your being and understand that, okay, you're going to come back to this with fresh ideas, fresh feelings and emotions, and you can be critical of it in a different way. But I always think it's very important for us to celebrate our accomplishments in life, and writing a book, writing a manuscript, writing a document, sometimes just writing an email. If it's difficult, if it was a challenge for you, stop, give yourself a pat on the back because you are doing a good job and you can go forward. So take a break for a week or so and then come back and you're going to start editing. And you need to remember that editing is a long process. Much like writing is a long process, editing has stages and development, and you need to honor that and enjoy the process. Be in the moment with the editing. It's not about the destination, it's about your journey. So I really want you to grasp that, enjoy that, and go forward. So one of the things you can do when you're at that stage where you're doing your first self-edit, structural edit, the high level, making sure that it conceptually bounds together into something that is cohesive and strong, you might want to enlist beta readers. You don't have to. This is optional. This is not written in stone, but many people do enjoy this. Enlisting beta readers means that you're going to have, these are mutual third parties. They're not paid. They're not writers. They're not professionals. They're people who enjoy reading, who will give you an honest feedback on your writing. In the same way that I would not ask your mom or your dad or your friend or your colleagues or anybody you know to read your book and give you feedback, I think you should do the same, or edit your book. I think you should do the same with beta readers. You should have somebody neutral that you don't really know who can be honest in their feedback. And with that being said, remember, it's just their opinions. It's just their first impressions of how the book took them on a journey. You want to make sure that you find people in the same genre. You want to make sure that they have, the same expectations. So there are lots of groups out there, and I know everyone's going to ask me, where? You kind of need to do that yourself, because whatever genre you're writing in, those are the people that you want to connect with. You need to find your people. So find your writing group, and I'm sure they can recommend who they've used or who they have heard about so that you can do that. So they're going to help you find and catch the elementary mistakes. They're not going to be doing a lot of they should not be editing. They should be reading it for a first impression to give you a feel on how it works. Now, if you do this beta reader, go ahead and get at least 3 because it gives you enough feedback that you can compare. You won't agree with everyone, and you don't have to agree with anyone. It's your book, you own it, it's your baby. But if you are unsure and you think they have a valid comment, but you're not positive on it, if you have some others that you can ask about or that they're commenting in the same section, then that would be an area that you can make a decision about, or just mark it. And when you move on to your professional editing stage, you can come forward with direct comments. This area I'm getting lots of comments on, I don't understand. And that allows you to get a better advice and critique from the professionals who do know the right and wrong ways to approach each of the writing situations and each of the emotional stages that you're trying to elicit there. So you want to incorporate the beta reader during your second revision. So you've gone through, you've written your book, you took a break, you had a vacation, you did your happy dance, you celebrated, you rested, you came back, you opened it fresh, you went through, you did all of your editing yourself, you used the tools that you've hooked up, you have a pattern, you're only editing, you're not writing, you're just taking notes, you're fixing. You might come back later, you can add more revisions, but you're just editing, After you've done that first initial one by yourself, that self-editing stage, then is your time to go ahead and do your second revision. And that's when you bring in the beta reader, is during that second revision. Again, editing is a process. It's going to take again and again, and it is circular. It's not linear. You can go forward and back. It's a little cha-cha, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, whatever you need to do there to make sure that you are succeeding in your self-editing process. So you want to test, beta readers are going to test your story in advance for you, giving you that initial feedback. They're going to look at it from an average reader who's interested in your genre, and they're going to serve as a sounding board. That's it. They'll give you a lot of feedback. Pick and choose what you think is better. There are no hard, fast rules here. These beta readers have little or no experience in writing. That's not their job. This is something they do for enjoyment. It's something they do as a hobby, and they love to actually speak with authors, and to be engaged. They're going to review only your draft of the story, and they're not professionals. So I know that I've heard recently that some people are having paid beta readers. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I think that, beta readers are out there at groups, reading groups. I think that's where I would head. But again, there's no hard and fast rules here. If you find something and you feel confident with it, then by all means, try it out and see if it works for you. And it's not necessary. Beta readers, totally optional. I include it here. Many people enjoy it. Of the experience there and how you're going to do your first revisions. So let's step into that structural self-edit. It says my internet is unstable, so I'm hoping everyone still got me there. So I'm going to allow excessive time during the self-editing process. You're going to make sure that you are aware that you've given yourself time to continue and that you're not in any rush. You realize that you're going to revise, and it's going to take time. You're going to examine your entire manuscript. And when I say that, you're going to look at it from a whole, from the 30,000 feet down. Does it have a beginning and end? Does it have the body? Does it have the supports? Does it have all of the structures necessary to make it stable and strong as a manuscript on its own, regardless if you're doing fiction, nonfiction, research, or academic, whatever it is? Are all of the necessary components be present and being used correctly? Again, are all the necessary components present and being used correctly? So that's what you are going to learn about. And this is the hard part. But again, this is the exciting part about being a writer and getting involved in editing and getting to do these. So we want you to remain objective, and I want you to follow an exact method. So I've been putting together this week a checklist, and those of you who follow on this, I will follow up. It's not going to be done tomorrow, I'm sorry. But if you sign up for our newsletter, I'll announce it and I'll put it up there. And if you want to send us an email, say, hey, send me that checklist, we'll gladly do that. That's no problem. But I want to have checklists to show you the in-depth amount of details that an editor goes through, because it's not just subjective, how's the voice and how's the sound and how does it feel emotionally, but the objective components that make it strong and stable. Again, all the elements present and being used correctly. And I'd like to give you that checklist. So keep in touch there. So you want to remain objective. This is not about, oh, I really, that you have an attachment to a character, you feel strongly about your position that you're promoting. You need to look at it from an editor's eyes, and we're going to help you do that here. So if you're doing fiction, you want to pay close attention to your overall story arc. And this is what we're talking about here. Fiction is, you're looking at your characters, your plot, your scenes, and all the elements that go in there. Is actually 38 elements that we've been covering on our YouTube series. And it's about 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes each one, but you can go through and listen to those. And it's knowing what questions you are asking yourself about that particular section of your each scene, and also making sure that you haven't overlooked anything. So you're going to break down your manuscript into every single scene. You're going to look at the word count. You're going to look at the presence of which characters there. You're going to make sure that the characters, which point of view they're using, the different points here that all go together. And once you have that list and you can check them off, that you're doing that with every single scene. Why? Well, the world is just really hard now. And there's millions of people typing as we speak, and they're creative and they're good and they're talented and they're in competition with you for that little bit of opportunity you have to publish or to become a bestseller, whatever your objective is. So make sure that you're, again, gathering the necessary tools. You won't learn them all at once, but you can over time become very, very successful in doing the self-editing for your own benefit and making sure that it works there. So again, try that self-editing tool, use the checklist and a process for accuracy. We have a checklist of 38 story elements, and I believe we've covered this a couple times in all of our different scenes, but I will continue to share that with you. The one particular one that I use, the 38 elements that we're looking at, is Storyteller. It's another online software, and it's good for basic self-editing. It's what we use in our background. We have the editorial licensed, certified editorial admission to that. So we're using it on a different level, but it helps experienced writers and even those who are still new to speed up at least and understand the self-editing process. And the more you understand, the more that you as a writer and us as editors can talk using the same vocabulary, the same definitions, the same understandings, and have the ground there, the better you can succeed in fixing the weaknesses and the necessary areas of your manuscript effectively. So again, this helps you. It also means that you can push and challenge and really expect your editor to step up, because you will know where you need help and they'll be able to do that for you, which means you're going to get a better return on your investment. Now, editing is not a cheap endeavor. It can cost, for an average manuscript, on the low end, you're looking $800, you can go $2,000, $3,000. And we have probably the most highly competitive prices out there. You can pay a lot more. What I encourage you is to find what you're doing there, but learn as much as you can, self-edit as much as you can, so that when you're making that investment, and it is the best investment you can make in your book, that when you do that, that you get the best work from your editor. Because if they have to spend all their time correcting commas and apostrophes or whatever it may be, dangling participles, then their time could have been better used really digging into the structure of your overall manuscript. And just understand that when you use these software such as Storyteller, it does have a learning curve. So it's not really ideal for those who are technically proficient. That's when we can talk about, you can do it yourself, the self-editing, you can do it and then get an editor, or you can have it done for you. And what that means is that we can't do it all, but we can do a large portion of it and walk you through it. So that's an option. So if at any point you're tired, you're fed up, and you've done your best, you don't have to be the best self-editor out there. You will learn with time. So be gentle on yourself. And again, go back to that celebration that you've completed the manuscript. And when you're ready, get in touch with an editor and they can help you complete your editing, and they can do it for you if necessary. I am including here the 38 Story Elements series. It's on YouTube. You can look up First Editing 38 Story Elements series. And that includes, we're still in the midst of it, but we're finishing it up. It covers all the areas of the story arc, the characters, the plots, and the scenes that I've talked about. And it really helps you to go through. So if you want to do it one by one, you can do it that way. Or you, of course, I would encourage you to try the software. It's phenomenal. It's so fantastic that First Editing actually invested in the company. So we are the first certified structural editors. That's why I would say that we are actively revolutionizing how a structural edit is done, because you've always had the experience of editors who are trained and vetted and professional. They have, success with self-publishing, success with publishing other authors, success in the agencies and in the publishing houses. Those people are all on our staff. However, when you train them to be even more objective and you have a checklist, it's like that pilot getting in to fly the airplane. We've got to get you from point A to point B, and we've got to do it safely. And no matter what, if we start with the same checklist every single time, then we know that we're not going to overlook anything. So I want to share that with you, and check that out. Make sure that you get the 38 story elements, because it is about the story arc. It's all these different things. So when you're ready, you can go ahead, and we have the certified story editors here. They have all the insight I'm talking about. I'm not trying to do a pitch here. I'm just sharing with you what we have done to improve the quality that we deliver. And that's very important, because we do offer a satisfaction guarantee, and I could not do that if I didn't have a standard from which to evaluate our successes. So for yourself, when you're self-editing structurally, you need to ensure that your audience is engaged. And you need to know your audience. And that means you need to find, where are those people? What writer are you emulating and are you similar to? And you need to make sure that you're speaking in the same tones and manners and addressing them in the same ways, because they have come, if they're a fan of a particular genre, they become accustomed to a certain length of a scene. They become accustomed to how the chapters are organized. They become accustomed to the conflict and the resolution and how it all happens. And you need to make sure that you are following that so that they're not frustrated. And it seems strange, but if it's not the same length as their normal genre count in the word count, it's frustrating for them, and they can't tell you why, but they're not as satisfied. So they're looking for the satisfaction, and you're making a promise. So make sure that you can deliver on that. So right towards your goal, when you're starting your self-editing, something I didn't put in here that I'm thinking about right now is I really want you to write a blurb so that you can keep that as your focus, keep that as your number one goal. It is your number one promise to your readers of what you're delivering. And when you are ready to go to your professional editor, send the blurb with it, because it really helps us see and confirm and fix any area that doesn't attain that promise. So right towards your goal, use effective call to actions in the manuscript when you're doing this. Now we're talking about nonfiction. So again, with the blurb also, if you're working in nonfiction here, and we switched over, we went from the manuscript and that onto the nonfiction. When you're dealing with a nonfiction manuscript, you need to determine, what is this? Is it a inspirational, motivational, educational book? Are you doing this to become a bestseller and establish yourself as an authority? Are you trying to help a particular cause? Are you dealing with history? And if you're dealing with history or a memoir or something of that. If it's in a story, literary type form, then we're going to use the same valuations, the same 38 story elements that we talked about with fiction, if it's in that story process. And I encourage you, even if your book is not literary or story-like in your nonfiction genre, I do always recommend that your samples and your examples follow a story, because those are more memorable, and humans love stories and we love the storyteller. So when you're doing that, as I'm mentioning here, back all your statements with examples, use the stories. It will help them remember, it will help them engage, they will come away talking about what they've heard, and they'll share it with their friends. And in the same way that you have a story coach for fiction, look for a book coach. There are many out there. We have some on our staff. But again, you want somebody who is familiar with that genre, who can assess that you're attaining all your goals. And part of that, just as a side step, is that you need to know what your goals are. If you have not clearly outlined why you're writing the book, what you want them to do, then we can never help you ascertain if you've actually done that or not. So please make sure that you are using your blurb and you're using that promise, and you really outline what you're trying to achieve here. Last section here is research. If you're doing this, you're going to edit. When you're doing the structural editing, it's very important to go on clarity, and there will be strict guidelines depending upon where you're submitting it. If it's going to a journal or different publications, they have very strict in-house guidelines. You need to follow those. I do recommend always, regardless of research, academic, whatever, short, simple sentences are the best read in the world right now. You know, the problem in the world is that we now read on these amazing little telephones, and we have to write in short and succinct ways that the reader will want to consume it in the way that they do. And if this is a very large phone, actually, it's not a small phone. There are ones that are, you know, much smaller than that. Anywhere between this and a pad, you're going to need to think about how it displays, how it's being consumed, because that is part of the reading experience from your buyers out there. So keep your sentences short and simple along with your paragraphs. Use only necessary adjectives and adverbs if you're doing research. You don't want to confuse it. This is not where you get to be giving lots of descriptions and beautiful things. If you want to do that, then go write your fiction novel. And you're going to limit your paragraph lengths, again, not only because of clarity and understanding, but also because of the way it's being consumed now, and support those statements, citations, references, notes, footnotes, etc., and make sure that those are following the guidelines. It is unacceptable to submit it, and it will not be reviewed, if it does not follow the guidelines, of which it must. So avoid dependent clauses. One of the things I like to talk about with research is that you always want to speak as an authority. So just limit anything. If it's an opinion, it needs to come across as, this is what I know, this is what it is, and this is why, and this is supported, and this is, you know, this is it. I can prove it, I can say it, it just simply is the truth, as much as you can, because that's why we do research. So again, in the same way, we only provide PhD editors for the academics. I believe that's why you should have a certified editor with your fiction stories, and you need a book coach, a proper book coach, when you're doing these high-end, top level. The world is changing. There's a lot of tools out there for the lower levels, but there's just not that knowledge or the capability without getting a human involved on these. So that's the high level. And then you have your line edits, which is when you're going through the revisions again and again and again, and you're trying to basically see how it's going together. The line edits are the revisions and the multiple times again and again. So now we want to talk about the final copy edits and the proofreading. So we did the structural and the line edits. And again, dig into your genre. Dig into your favorite author and make sure that you are creating the same type of rewards for your readers. So, you know, break it apart. And I know that we can now upload fantastic writers into ProWritingAid and other things, and they will assess your writing in comparison to that. So if you can do that, use a tool which allows you to do that, because it's so revealing about what are the simple little addictive treats that the reader is gathering from indulging in that particular manuscript. So carrying on, the final copy edits and the proofreading here, you remember you're going to self-edit again and again and again. So be okay with that. Use the online editing tool through all sections, from your structural edit to your line edit to your final copy edit. Use it all the time. It's helpful. It teaches you. It is a learning experience. Run a report. And then when you're done with all of these stages of the self-editing and you feel that you've done the most that you can, or if you're just fed up and tired and you can't possibly do it anymore, that's when you reach for a professional to help you. And again, ProWritingAid, we're inside there. So just take a look. But make sure you always get a professional so that they can help you. And again, make sure it is the right match for you. Somebody who has experience in your genre, who understands your needs. Ask them for a sample so that you can see that the voices match. But more importantly, in the same way, when you're doing your beta readers or your own self-editing, match it to your favorite authors, match it to the people you're emulating, and make sure that you are achieving all the small details. I can give you generic checklists, but I can't give you the individual ones. If you're a big, J.K. Rowling fan, there are certain things that she does that's just unique, and people are emulating that. People who are succeeding, who are appealing to the same audience, are doing that very well. So learn, learn, learn. It's a never-ending life learning process. So final edits, final step edits, and the proofreading. You go through the 3 levels: the structural, the line, and the copy editing. You're okay with the revisions. You're okay with the journey. You're okay with knowing it's going to take time. You know that you go forward, and then maybe one of those beta readers or one of the editors said, you know what, you need to move this around. You have a whole section missing, and you have to write a bunch of new scenes. You put it in. You have some support material that's just not there. And once you've created it, you're going to go back, which means you may have to do it again, but it's a circular process. So format your manuscript. And I do encourage you, once you do this, do the copy editing last prior to putting it into formatting. And once you've done the formatting, which is when you're uploading it, you're making sure how it displays on these small devices we're reading on, that then you're going to get the proofreader to go through and make sure that nothing got messed up because of the format we're using to put it up online. And lastly, of course, Kobo is an excellent platform there to do self-publishing and do the aggregation out there. So when you're going to do the structural editing, think like a structural editor. There are different editors for different phases, and they don't overlap. So it's best to switch editors if you're using an editor, or switch your mindset and have a different objective when you go through each phase. So again, taking those pauses between your editing, making sure that you're moving along in a structured manner. Okay, today I'm doing structural editing, and next month I'm doing line editing. So you can come back to it with different objectives. When you're doing the structural editing, you're going to look at your proposals, ideas. How are you putting together this entire manuscript? How does it fit? And does it fulfill that promise, that blurb that I've asked you to write, so that you are delivering what you promised to your readers based upon what is the norm in your genre and in your area of writing. And use the checklist always for focus and accuracy so that nothing is overlooked. And you're going to do that not by the book, not by the chapter, but by every scene. You're going to use the checklist. And it is quite intense, but that's what an editor does. And you get through a little bit of it at the beginning, but after a year or so, you're going to be really good at it, and you're going to feel good and confident for it, and your writing will soar because of it. So when you're doing line editing, it's all about consistency in your speech and in your themes, that it's readable, that it's smooth, it flows, you have nice transitions, that you're not overlooking anything, and you're keeping that voice again and again, but you want to appeal to your audience. Make sure that it's consistent, your point of view, how you're looking at things, that you are matching the norms in your genre there. Remove the overused, redundant, use the report. The report is a really good time to look at where you're struggling, and then run that report, and then go through and just do a find, replace, or a find and then replace each one individually, so that you can get better and better at your writing and make those important inline corrections. Line editing means that we take the book, we're reading it, this paragraph, but line by line, not the conceptual big picture, but the individual, chapter by chapter. How is it mixing together, and how does it feel right in what we're doing? And then when you're finishing, that is, this is the part that really is just knowing your grammar, your spelling, your punctuation, your syntax, knowing all those nasty little rules that editors love, 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 so that we have consistency and it reads the way you think you've written it. Again, it needs to read with the same intent that you think you have written it. So it's very important to look at the different rules and to make sure it's working. And again, it is a circular process. I love this here. You've got writing, you've got story editing, you've got the beta readers, you've got copy editing, proofreading, and publishing. These are all the situations, and it's not linear. You don't graduate. You will go back and forth and round and round. And at some point, somebody will say, you know what? You're done. You've done it. Good job. And you get to submit it and you get to move on. So that's where you do it. First, you're going to do your editing, and then you're going to do your publishing. And you want to make sure it's all there. If you have any additional questions, I'm glad to take them now. And of course, you can call us. We do have humans answer the phone. And if you email us or send in a document for a free editing sample, we will also call you back at a time that's convenient for you. You can request a time, and one of our account managers will help you do that. So again, we love talking about your baby, about your little book, and making sure that it's excelling in the way that you want it to. So that being said, let's see, I'm going to stop the share. I hope Michelle's around. Hey,
I'm back. Okay, we do have just a couple of questions.
Sure.
If anybody else has any, go ahead and get them in now to the Q&A so we don't miss anything. But the first question is, why is active voice preferred to inactive voice or passive voice?
Well, I guess, I can give you all the theoretical ways around it, but it really is just more engaging. Anytime something is actively happening, you can see the picture. But when it's passive, the dog was hit by the car. It's the dog, you think about, okay, the dog was hit. Okay, was hit. The brain doesn't process it. So if you make it linear, the car hit the dog. You have an object, you have a subject, a verb, and an object, and it's very clear. So keeping everything in an active voice is more engaging for the reader. It's better for the mind. It's more soothing. That being said, most research or documentary things, those are written in passive tense, and that's just the method of the area. But stay in active voice as much as you can to engage your readers, to give a more exciting journey in the writing and what you're trying to tell them, so they have it clear. I think when you write in passive, you kind of whirl around and come back, and it's just not near as clear. And again, less is more. Fewer words, fewer, fluff in between. Let's just make sure it's all clean. We have other questions.
The next question is, are there editing services from First Editing that cater to British English?
Absolutely. And that's when you should always do this with using us or anybody else out there, but make sure that you indicate what language, which English you're going to be using. Now, the editor will see that immediately, but sometimes, they just want to double up, and they'll check with you and say, did you want this in British, Canadian, Australian, American, whatever it is, because, it's very important that it matches your readers. It needs to match your audience, and your audience want to read. If you are taking them on a British experience, they need to hear it in the British tone. If you're taking them to America and New York, that's a totally different experience. So you need to speak to them in the same way you put them in a specific location. The words that you use are very important in that. And yes, does not mean that you need a British editor, but you do need a professional editor who is highly aware and trained to do that. So, and we have both, it doesn't matter. You should always test it first.
Okay, the next one. What is the difference between the different types of editing that you mentioned?
Okay, the different types of editing, again, we're going to the structural editing, which is the high level content editing. And that's basically making sure that, I'm just going to stay in fiction for now, that your manuscript is fulfilling the different elements in every section, from the scene and the plots and the characters, and that you're evaluating it that way. It's making sure that all pieces are there and that you have cohesively put it together and you're starting to put the meat on it. The line editing, which is next, is more about the flow of your words. It's when you're just dealing with pedantics of how does it sound, how does it feel, what does it make me think, those particular emotional engagement. And then the copy editing is the rules, the grammar, spelling, punctuation. It's the bot. It's the robot saying wrong, wrong, wrong. So because your brain, the humans, we are wired in certain ways that it has to come and fulfill the right things. So again, it's normally structural, and then you have line editing, and then you have copy editing. Once you finish the copy editing, you go into formatting. Formatting is followed by proofreading, which ensures that it was accurately laid out and nothing changed there. You will do copy editing throughout all three, but it's best to do the structure first, because you may move, delete, or add entire areas of your book based upon the recommendations of your editor. It would be a waste of their time and your money to spend an excessive amount of energy to focus on grammar, spelling, punctuation, when they really need to be talking about, you don't have any conflict. There was no resolution here. We need to get the characters. We got the wrong point of view. We need to change location. We need to activate the senses here. These are all different things that you're going to do from a structural edit. I hope that answers the question.
The next one, how do you know that you really finished your editing? Doesn't it always feel like there is more to be done?
Yes. It does always feel like there's more to be done. And I think that is dependent upon the personality. I'm a mom, and there's the kids who are like, good enough, I'm done. They're out the door. I'm done, good enough. And you're like, well, no, not really. It needs to have this. And then you have the kids who just never go outside because they're still fixing, and they're obsessive about the small details. And so as an editor, as a mom, you come in and you're the one who says, okay, you're between here and here. And as long as you're between here, we're good. Now, I'm going to tell you, to make it really good, you need to continue to get to here. But if you're okay, and this was created for your own family, and it's a memoir about your life story, and you just need to pass along your story and your voice, then good enough is good enough. But I'm not going to let you do less than good enough. You can't leave the situation till we have represented you. And any editor who is worth their value will never deliver less than what you need. So they will validate and confirm when you say, I think it's done. They will validate or invalidate that statement and tell you why. And then you can assess from there. So yes, you can spend your entire life editing, but you don't want to keep shining something that's just not going to get better. There's a point where the shine doesn't get any brighter. So we try to help you meet that shine to your level. That's what an editor does. And it's kind of hard to describe that, but I think that does it.
Okay, what if you were struggling to define a genre for your story? Is this important for publishers?
Oh, yes. And I'm not on the publishing side, but oh my gosh, yes. You need to go in and find your favorite author, and you're going to go up. You can start with Google, or you can go into Amazon, and the keywords there, you are going to enter that author, and you're going to look and see where they are selling, which category they're in, and choose your favorite books again, and start matching them in and say, does this fit me? Does this fit me? But you have got to. And the great thing is the more you can find your people, your audience, your readers, your niche of the ones who will love you, who will follow you forever. If you can get that down to a specific small category, you will have pre-orders, and launches will go smoothly, and things will happen so much better if you have all of that machine in process. So it's very, very, very important to find out the genre and the subgenre and the sub keywords and the keywords and the long tail phrases and all this metadata that probably a lot of authors haven't heard, but definitely you need to get involved with this. You need to learn about it, because Writing is just one small part of the process. Editing is a much larger, but just again, another part of the process. And you need to be planning at the same time that you're writing, you know, your audience and your publish and your launch and how you're going to promote and your marketing and all these different things, because nowadays the agencies, the publishing houses are not looking. They don't have to search. They don't have to hunt. There's millions of people coming into them daily. So you need to have this. You need to have your 10,000 followers set up and ready to go. Doesn't mean if you don't have it, you'll fail. But the more you have, the easier it is for you to succeed. So yes, go into Kindle, go into Kobo, go into Google, enter it and see all of the, you know, when you start typing, especially on Google, it'll finish the sentence for you and it drops down like 5 or 6 and you can see those. Also, if you go to the bottom of the page, there's all the suggested ones there. So use those keywords, go into Amazon and do the same. Find out where it is, but compare in the same way I would tell you if you're doing a book cover, you need to match the style of the book cover. You need to match the keywords and the genres so that you can find the right people. It would be a shame for you to put all this work in and then not find your people because you didn't know which room they were in, you know, and that's basically what it is. It's just a never-ending labyrinth of rooms. And once you walk in, then, you know, it's great. This magnetic thing happens when you find your people. It's just beautiful. And they all love it. And you talk about the same things and you don't need a million people. You know, really, there are some authors who just excel and they've got 20,000, you know, no matter what they sell, there's people, I gotta get it. I'm so excited. And they will inspire you and you will feel better. So yes, absolutely. You must know your genre. You must find it out and you must do that yourself. Or get some help, but you know, do it.
Okay, next we have, is the story coach the same as a structural editor?
Story Coach is a structural editor. That's a structural edit for fiction. So Story Coach is, you know, we're playing around with that because we're coaching you on the story. In nonfiction, you're being a book coach, is an executive book coach. These are words we're using, but you know, when you're in content editing, it can be structural, developmental. The different words are used through that, but it really is the structure in fiction, which has not really been dealt with on the level that it is now. We're entering a new era. We've been stuck using the same, you know, word and track changes, and that's it for 20 years. There's been no upgrades to that. So now we have AI that's coming in and we can look at your story arc. We put it in there and immediately draws out your story arc. And it's amazing what you're doing there. So a story coach edit is basically looking at the structure, making sure using a full checklist of what is there, finding it and doing it for you. You can do it on your own. You can do it manually. We'll give you the checklist. You can sit down, you can do it yourself. And it, you know, you'll do fine. And some people can do this so well that they can skip a structural editor and go straight into a line editor. That's fine. But it's a new game now because it's going to be very easy to see if something works or not. In the same way you're seeing different books out there that are being group sourced and crowdfunded and different things, it's because they can evaluate, is this a winner before they publish it? The same way they know if it's going to be a really great song because it has a certain refrains at the certain times and it fits the pattern and it works. So yeah, Story Coach is a structural edit for fiction.
Okay, is it acceptable to have co-protagonists that offer the reader dual points of view?
If it works for you, I'm not going to cut your protagonist out. You know, is that common in what you're writing? You know, now we're getting into little things. You'd have to know the, you know, the genre and who it is and how it's, but you know, I can't answer that. But sure, if they're giving the right amount of weight within the storyline and they're necessary to push the story arc forward, the plot forward, then absolutely. And a good way to assess that is going to be to look at your each scene, and you need to break those down per your word counts of each scene. And then you need to look at your characters and where they are distributed in the scenes and how much weight they're getting in the scenes. and do they outweigh your protagonist? If they outweigh the protagonist, then you know you've got a problem. So the protagonist, your antagonist, whatever you're doing here, it needs to be weighted proportionally to the value of their significance within the story. So I hope that helps. But look at your scenes, the word count per scene, look at your characters, how well they're distributed, and then decide, could I combine them into one person? Is that a better use? Or do I need to balance her evenly?
Okay. Do you recommend critiquing groups, and do you have a favorite?
I have no favorite. Critiquing groups, again, that's similar to beta readers. You can do that. You know, it's really up to you. I get loaded down by too many opinions. It's just so overwhelming. And you really have to be tough on that. You have to be, you know, with people who are in the same genre. Don't just find a group to critique you if they don't read or write your types of books. So make sure that you're in the right group. But if it works for you, absolutely. If you feel empowered and encouraged and, you know, energized by what you get from there, absolutely. The moment it tears you down or discourages you, get rid of it. Period.
Why did you say to avoid dependent clauses? Is this also true for nonfiction?
That is for the academic and research, I believe, there, because it becomes too much. A lot of research is done, a large portion of research in the world, not everyone, but you know, it's all done in English, more or less, a lot of it. And so you have people who English is not their first language. So you really need to keep the grammar and the punctuation, all of that, as simple as possible, because when it's dependent, it could change the intent of your proposal and not support your stance there. So you need to make sure that your thesis is supported properly. And if something happens there, if that, heaven forbid, that comma should go missing or something happens, it could result in a disaster. So this is for research and academic, not the fiction.
How much editing do you recommend doing prior to beta readers, and is this for structural only?
Beta readers are during your second structural revision. You do that first round and you are doing, you know, everything we talked about, breaking it down, looking at it. You've written, you take your break, you do a happy dance, and you go into you come back to do the structural edit. Once you've done that by yourself the first time, looking at it through the eyes of an editor, looking at it through the objectives, not the subjective, then you take that to the beta readers, because they are going to be subjective. They're going to come back and say, okay, I didn't really feel that moved about it when she died. It was no big deal. You go, oh, that's supposed to be a major, you know, emotional draw here, and he didn't care. So then you can evaluate it, but you're going from objective to subjective, and then you come back to the objective. It's just making sure that you're touching all the points that you need to do. So it normally happens as part of your second structural edit is when you involve the beta readers.
Is it better to retain the same book or story coach or get different ones? I'm looking to establish a relationship with one, and I do not know if this was the way to go.
I have thousands of authors who love and are devoted to their editors and will wait months to get back on their docket. And that's totally the way it is. You have a special relationship with your editor, and you can maintain that. When you change from your structural edit to a line edit or your copy edit, then it's ideal to switch out, because they know your writing so well that they're kind of in your head, and they may not catch it as clearly. You know, they're still humans, and the humans would miss that because they know exactly, you know, oh, it's going to be great, and they're following along, and they're one of your biggest fans. So you can keep the same structural editor, and I say this regardless for you or anybody else, but it's ideal to have a structural editor for that phase, and then switch to a line editor, and then switch to a different copy editor, because they are three distinct areas, and they need to be approached by unique eyes and freshness to achieve the things there, the objectives. So I would go with the structural editors. Yes, you can stay with them, but when you get your copy editor, then change it out, get somebody else.
The next question is, I am both a writer and a magazine editor. How do I avoid editing another person's story into my own vision structurally?
Well, there are fantastic, you can drop me an email, editors at First Editing, and I can give you a recommendation, and even I have some connections there to get you a discount if you want to go through the training to become a story coach editor. Being a writer and having edited and self-edited or even assisted with other books does not necessarily qualify you to take on a whole business of editing. The people that I have in our company, they've done this 7-10 years minimum. They've worked in-house in different publishing houses. They are specialists in their genre. They have, they have degrees, they have certifications, they're vetted, we give them tests. There's a lot of that. So it really means to, to be sure that as a journalist, of course, you've got a lot of training, and I don't want to discard that. So I'm speaking more for everyone, and I don't know you, so don't take this offensively, because I don't know who you are. But in general, being a writer and having edited a book or two does not qualify you to be an editor. So I do encourage you always to go ahead and get the additional training, the additional education on that. So it is part of that training is how to maintain the writer's voice. And that's the advantage of being an editor, completely separate from being an author. Because an author, you have your own subjective views, and you have your opinions, and your opinions feel like they're truths, and they may or may not be. As an editor, you're trained to look objectively for all the different elements that need to be present and to use them correctly, and then to mimic and maintain that person's voice, which means, if you're editing erotica, you need to keep that voice. Even if you would never write erotica, it's very important that you know how to edit that genre and do it well. It doesn't mean you're capable of writing it. It just means that you have been trained to maintain and enhance their voice, not eliminate or overwrite it. And that's training and time and years. And you probably if you're a journalist, you're on your way, I'm sure. But additional training would be best.
Okay, I think we have time for one more.
Okay.
What happens if an editor really dislikes a story he or she is hired to edit? A friend of mine recently hired an editor, but found that he thought of himself as a story doctor and is demanding constant rewrites and even changes of character and plot. The battle continues.
Oh, how horrible. It doesn't happen often, but it can happen. And I can think of one editor that was offended because of particular views of a writer. But in general, your job is to remain neutral. But I think what it sounds like for your friend has happened is that there was not a clear definition of the job. There needs to be a clear job definition, what the deliverables are in the business world. We're going to make an exchange. You're going to provide us this amount of money. I'm going to provide this much back. And, where does it begin? When does it end? Now, if you're hiring somebody and they're on a never-ending consulting basis, that's way different. We don't do that. We're good at the hardcore. We know what you need. This is what we do, and we'll do it in this way. But if you want more than that, you got to go somewhere else. If you want less than that, we can't. We will only give you what you need, no less. So that's the way it has to be. But I would break that relationship and walk away, because you don't want to end up suffering. And people are bored in the world right now. They really need communication, and sometimes picking on another person is a way to stay in contact. But find out from your next editor, exactly what they're going to deliver, and do a sample and ask them for their full evaluation of what the process is going to be like. And, make sure it meets what you want, because it's not your job to do what they tell you unless you're hiring a trainer, unless you want a doctor or a coach that's going to push you, but you signed up for that or you didn't. So it sounds like there was a misunderstanding. That's unfortunate.
All right, we are out of time. Thank you so much, JoEllen, for being here with us. And thank you to everybody who attended today and asked your great questions. The links are dropped for you in the chat again if you would like to access anything. Everything is there for you. And we will see you again next month for another self-editing school.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'll see you then. Thank you for coming, everyone.
Bye, everybody.